We've fielded many questions and suggestions from parents, which we welcome and love. And certainly a theme among those questions has been about how we structure home learning. Different schools have different models. And we've been seeking to identify what we at SPH believe to be best practices about home learning. And a question that has come up often is, why don't we just do it the same way we did it before, where we start at 7 a.m. and we finish at 3 p.m. and children go from class to class to class to class to class from beginning to end of day? Why are we not doing that? Maybe Mark, can you start that one off?
Yeah, some schools all over the world are choosing to do that. They're choosing to replicate a bricks and mortar school environment in an online environment. And to be honest with you, that's probably the easiest way to transition to home learning, where you simply mimic what goes on in a regular school day, you transfer that into a digital environment. Very early on in this process, we made a decision, and I think it was the right decision. I think it was a research-based decision to not do that, to ensure that our teachers could use the tools that were available to them to provide the best learning opportunities for their students during this time. We wanted to make sure that if students would learn better in what is called an asynchronous environment, so an environment that doesn't necessarily follow the set schedule, that we wanted our teachers to have the freedom to do that. I will speak from personal experience even. I know for my daughter, who's in second grade, she loves it when her teachers record the lessons, because sometimes she might want to watch it 2 or 3 times, or pause at different parts and rewind for 15 seconds, make sure she's understood something, or can ask a clarifying question of my wife or myself, or even her brother who's in 4th grade, to make sure that she understands what's going on. You can't do that necessarily in a live classroom with 20 plus students watching a recording of a teacher. So we wanted to make sure that teachers had the freedom to do what was best for their students. And we feel that not mimicking a bricks and mortar school was what was best, to use the tools that were available to us in a digital environment to provide superior and more effective learning experiences for students. One of the big challenges that schools are running into all over the world, and if you look at newscasts and so on, you'll see this, is the issues with classroom management in an interactive classroom. If you have one teacher with 25 students all on a Zoom call, there's even been stories of issues with security and issues with students cutting off their teacher or shutting down the video and so on. It's really tough to manage students in an online environment. And so using some of the other tools that are available to us allow us to ensure that learning can continue, and we make most effective use of the digital tools we have available to us.
Great, thanks. Somebody else jump in on that?
Sure, just talking as a mom. My kids like to play Minecraft during their breaks. And so literally I am trying to reduce the screen time. And if they had online classes from 7:30 to 2:30, I wouldn't like it. I'm already, again, trying to manage the screen time. And I've actually observed my kids on Zoom calls, and sometimes it's really great, but it is also hard managing that many students. And oftentimes the teacher has to put the students on mute because the teacher needs to speak. And yeah, it's difficult. I also want to acknowledge that some of our families have moved to their home countries, which is great. I'm happy that they made that decision. However, it's hard for them if it would be on a Zoom call in Indonesian time, where they have moved to, back to America or Canada, Australia, or Korea. So I think the mix that we're doing, I think it's really helpful for students and families. And I hope that parents can see that perspective.
Sure. I think I would add a comment about balance as well, where we've done a lot of work in the past year talking about what holistic education means. And that involves so much more than just the mind connected to, particularly the mind connected to a screen, where we really want our children to have the opportunity to practice their instruments and get physical exercise and play and rest and play with their siblings and read books and do things that are not just what's prescribed by a teacher in a structured classroom environment. So I actually think that in this model, our children are going to be much more likely to achieve a balanced rhythm in their days, even while they're home. What about...
if I could give another...
Oh yeah, go ahead, Mark. Yeah.
Sorry, if I can give another example with my daughter, I'm fairly confident she won't be viewing this video, so I have no problem using her as an example. But just last week, she was having a rough day. The day started well, and then things turned a corner when she didn't understand something in a math class. And her anxiety started coming out. The anxiety of the transition from seeing her teacher on a daily basis and being able to interact with her friends, and uncertainty about getting sick, and all those kinds of things started coming out. And so my wife and I made a decision to just pause the school day. Usually she's done around lunch, maybe a little after lunch, and we just kind of paused things and helped her get down and through things. And we each spent some time with her working on very small tasks to kind of get her refocused. And we just shifted her school day, and she didn't finish her schoolwork that day until around 5:30, just before we sat down for dinner as a family. And so this kind of blended environment allows us as parents even to make those decisions for and with our kids, to recognize that they're little human beings who are also struggling with anxiety about this change and this transition. And sometimes they need some flexibility. They need some elasticity to ensure that learning can occur. And so as a parent, I know I really appreciate it, my wife does as well, that kind of flexibility that's built into this model.
I think one of the challenges that we're going to be facing for some time yet is figuring out the right balance, where we want to be interactive every day. We want our students and our teachers to have daily experiences face-to-face through video calls. But we also need to make sure that it's the right amount, and it depends on the age of the children. So that issue is connected, I think, to what is required of teachers in preparing for home learning. So what are you picking up on from your teams? Like, what are they telling you about what's keeping them busy? Are they busier than before? Or are they finding this easy? What are they doing when they're not online in their video calls?
I think one thing for our teachers that's been different and it's been keeping them busy is just modifying the things they're used to doing in quarter four at this time of year. When we get to this quarter, sometimes we have certain assessments we're doing in a certain way because we've been building on skills throughout the year. And so finding ways to modify those assessments into a more appropriate setting for home learning, that's been keeping our teachers busy. And also just keeping up with the relationships with their students. Mm-hmm. As was mentioned earlier, being in a large group video call with 20 or 25 grade 6 students might not be effective. And so some of our teachers have been breaking those calls up into 3 or 4 small group calls throughout the day. And so instead of, they may have a large group math lesson on a Monday, and then on Wednesday, they divide their class into smaller groups to follow up. And so what would be one lesson for a teacher is broken up, over a longer period of time because they've identified that that's a better way of reaching their students. And so for us at Centool, our teachers have been spending a lot of time trying to figure out what's best for their individual class. And that's obviously taking time. And I think they're doing a good job of, now that we're a few weeks in, of identifying some of those best practices for their specific grade and subject.
I think even providing feedback, like helpful, usable feedback for students has been a challenge too, because often in a class situation, face-to-face, students bring some work, asking for some feedback. It's just a spoken thing that might take 1 minute. But really the only option they have is through emails really at the moment, unless it's a very small Zoom group like you were talking about, Brett. So that just takes time, and it's not as immediate necessarily, and students take a while perhaps to read that email and then respond. And so it just draws the whole process out, which might only take, a few minutes in a classroom, can take a much longer drawn out exercises when it has to be over email.
I was out for a walk in our neighborhood a few days ago and crossed paths with one of our teachers from junior school. And I could just tell that the experience of teaching in this new environment was extremely draining. It just required so much effort and creativity. This teacher was doing a lot of recordings, but doing that without any people around, trying to act as though she has a whole bunch of 4-year-olds in the room with her, but it's really just her and a recording device. So I just admired the dedication that she was putting into it, and effort and energy, but just realized, wow, she's got a really, really tough task.
I was talking to a teacher today, and they were saying for a 15-minute recorded session of teaching can take anything up to 2 hours for them to actually record and get right to the point where they feel like it said everything they wanted to say and got all the points across and was clear.
Yes.
That's a lot of time.
I believe it.
My husband is a teacher, so I get to literally see what he does when he's not online. And it's a lot of work with any kind of screencast video. Sometimes he'll record it, several times to just get it right. And also I just see him doing like online feedback during class time, giving each student feedback. And so rather than, in class, you could just quickly say it, but it's all written. And I want to say a thank you to our teachers too, because they've had to have this huge learning curve on technology. And as we all know, technology can be very frustrating and time consuming. And so a lot of them are researching just the best technology practices for their classroom. And so that's even taking a lot of time. And I know for some of us are high tech, some of us are low tech or no tech. So it's just been a challenge, I know, for all the teachers, but just grateful that they've stepped up.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to say thank you to all the teachers for what they have done. I think what sometimes we forget is not only that they have to prepare all this in a different way, like what Helen say, with its challenges, but they also have family. They also have children that they have to look after, and to be someone next to the children themselves while also preparing this, whatever they have to prepare for the students. So they have kind of like a double responsibility, right? So yeah, really appreciate what they've done.